Welcome to Make EdTech 100. I'm Lindy, educator, K-12 EdTech advisor, and your host. This is a podcast where we keep it real about what actually works in classrooms. No hype, no overwhelm, just practical strategies, honest stories, and tools that make a real difference for teachers and students. So come along with me on a journey to make EdTech 100. In today's episode, I am talking with an elementary teacher who is going to open the window into her classroom. We cover a lot of ground. We talk about what AI literacy actually looks like from kindergarten all the way through 6th grade. We talk about how she teaches young kids about AI without ever touching chatbot AI type tools. And she gets very real about what screen time limits through legislation and or policy would mean for both her as a teacher and also her students. These are the conversations that absolutely have to happen right now. I'm glad I can bring them to you, and thank you for listening. Today, I am talking with a teacher who has spent more than 25 years helping elementary students become creative problem solvers through computer science, coding, robotics, and design thinking. I have personally had the pleasure of visiting her classroom in Arizona and can say that she definitely talks the talk and walks the walk. She is really passionate about AI literacy and helping educators and students and families even navigate both the opportunities and the challenges of artificial intelligence through thoughtful conversations and practical classroom experiences. If that's not enough, she's also very active outside of her classroom. She speaks on national stages, and she is releasing her first book this summer about AI and kids called White Space, which we will talk more about. Please welcome Tara Menghini to the podcast. Welcome, Tara.
Thank you, Lindy. It's great to be here, and it's always great to talk to you.
Yes, you as well. I am excited for this conversation. I am excited to dig in to what it looks like in your classroom. But first, is there anything else that listeners should know about you?
I think you covered it. I appreciate the intro. I'm passionate about teaching and being in my classroom. That is my number one priority always, are the kids. That's what fuels me. And so I love being in the classroom. And it's only been in the last maybe 5 years that I felt like a real need to elevate my voice outside of the classroom because of kind of what's happening. And I feel like I have enough history in education. I've seen lots of eras of education. I started teaching in 1999. I tell the kids I started teaching in the 1900s. You know, there's always that historical to make me sound like I'm 100 years old. And so seeing technology evolve so much over that time really, I think, gives me perspective. And then being in the classroom, boots on the ground, as we figure out what's happening with AI and what, you know, how we're going to prepare kids for it and teachers. That's been my passion and my work and what really fuels me.
You've really gone through since the 90s, overhead projectors, then smart boards, smart quote unquote boards, then
Right.
into what would have been after that. Then we started going like iPads were a lot, start going one-to-one. Well, computer labs. We had computer labs in there at some point.
The computer lab, that was really, I mean, my first classroom, I just looked back at pictures of my first classroom, my first year teaching, and I had one computer in my classroom, and it was for me. And It was state of the art back then that I was putting my grades in, and we were just starting to implement email. I thought back to whether I like Googled anything even back then, but like information back then, I had Ask Jeeves. I don't know if you remember Ask Jeeves.
I was going to say Ask Jeeves.
I was like, oh my gosh, I can ask a question and it answers me, you know, and that's not even accurate. It wasn't like that. It was like I could get information in a way that wasn't just a book,
you
know,
instant information. Yeah,
exactly. And so, you know, I think about the kids that I taught that first year. I taught 4th grade. They were 10 years old, and how their world has changed. And obviously, we want, as teachers, I think our ultimate goal is always, no matter what we're teaching, to prepare kids for everything, right? Prepare kids for high school, prepare kids for college, prepare kids for life. We have to take technology into account, and not just the exact tool that we're using, because as we know, that changes faster than we can, it's changing faster each year that I teach. It just feels like the rate of change and the rate of how it hits our kids is faster than ever.
Unbelievable. Yep.
Yeah, like it really is hard to keep up. You have to actively try.
I named the podcast Make EdTech 100 because that meaning is very open to interpretation of what that means to you. So we can get to know you a little bit more. What does Make EdTech 100 mean to you?
I love the name of the podcast, and I love that idea of keeping it real, which I think that's my interpretation of like keeping it 100, like always being real. And I remember when I first felt compelled to share outside my classroom, and when I first joined, let's say, like the LinkedIn community, or made an Instagram page specifically for what I was doing following my journey to help other teachers, it was intimidating. And especially getting onto a space like LinkedIn, where everyone seems to know everything and can cite research and can, they all sound really knowledgeable, and I was intimidated. And I remember my husband telling me, like, your superpower is that you're real. You are living this, you are doing this, and it doesn't matter if you are an expert, because nobody is. And so just be real, share what you know. And I've really carried that through everything I've done. The first time I spoke at a conference, I'm like, you've got that feeling of like, am I qualified? Am I, does
Imposter
what I have to say
syndrome.
matter? Yeah. Am I thinking that I'm thinking big thoughts, and really they're just really basic thoughts that everybody knows? But what I started to realize is that a lot of experts assumed that we knew things. And I didn't know the things they were saying. They were starting from here, and I needed them to start from here. And I realized that I do that naturally. I teach kindergartners. So if someone needs things explained to them, I explain it as if as if they're a kindergartner. In fact, I was at an AI, like a Women in AI event, and the person sitting next to me, this woman was a materials engineer, and she used machine learning to way up here, and she was explaining it to me, and I was like, can you just explain things as if I'm a kindergartner? And she laughed, just burst out laughing, like she thought I was kidding. And I'm like, no. I am not kidding. I need you to explain this very complex thing to me as if I'm a kindergartner. And so I just feel like I can make this learning accessible, whether it's a kindergartner. I hear from college professors and high school teachers that the things that I teach as far as AI literacy are things that translate into their classrooms too, because there's really no age level when it comes to learning about AI. We're all starting somewhere, and it's with the basics, I think, is the best way to start. I feel the same way about learning coding. If you start coding in kindergarten, it's just like if you start learning French when you're a child, you're at a different level. It doesn't matter how old you are. These are things that we learn by doing them, languages that we learn by practicing. And so you can't really put an age level or a grade level on that. Authenticity is what I really always strive for. And that's served me well, because I can only be who I am. And so, that's worked for me.
That's great. I love that you said there's no age limit or age restriction, minimum age requirement to learn these things. There are a lot of people out there that are saying that we should not do anything AI until students reach a certain age.
Yes.
And, whether it's third grade, fourth grade, that tends to be what I hear is no AI pre-K to 2. How do you respond to that? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I would go, and I know the technical reason why, but I recently was kind of studying this whole idea of kids when they're 13 that's the age that we decide to let them, where it's, I don't know what the term would be, legal or whatever. That's when kids are allowed to
Yeah, like
have an
terms of
account on
use.
social
Typically,
media,
like
right?
terms of use of tech is 18.
Exactly. And it has to do with like legal stuff like COPA and stuff. Like I get that that's why, but I was like thinking about that. Like, why is that the magical age? Shouldn't it be like that there's a criteria that we teach or they learn before whatever age it is? Because that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And it's the same thing if you look at having conversations with kids early. Of course, you're going to have a different conversation with a kindergartner than you're going to have with a fourth, fifth, or sixth grader. And I teach that entire range of kids. But if you start young, I have to believe that they're going to stay open to the ideas that are important when it comes to talking about AI. And because AI is the type of technology that there aren't a lot of barriers to prevent them from trying out AI, we can't assume that they're not going to use it.
You don't even have to have an account to use ChatGPT.
Exactly. Yeah. And so we can't just say, well, they're not going to use it until they're 13 because it's not allowed. Like, that's ridiculous.
Totally
of course they are.
Yeah.
Exactly. Not to mention that generative AI is not the only AI that kids are, dealing with. I have second graders, third graders who tell me that they have an Alexa or an Echo in their bedroom.
Yes.
And they wonder about it. They wonder. They're like, why is it there? And what is it doing? And is it listening to me like at the earliest ages? And it's just embedded in their worlds. And so I think that there's a powerlessness that they feel, and that there's especially a feeling that they are not getting a choice. And because of that, I find kids, especially in later elementary years, being really resistant to the idea of AI because they're like, stop shoving it in my face. I don't want it. I want to think for myself. And so I think that you give power back to kids when you explain what it really is and how it works. I've worked with my district to create an AI learning progression K-12, and then I've developed kind of a K-6 learning progression in my classroom so that kids are learning about AI in kind of age-ready chunks as they go through the K-6 system at my school, at least, and in my classes, because I see them for 7 years. And so we develop it over that time frame.
So are your kindergartners learning about AI, interacting with AI, all of the above? Like, what does that look like? Especially at that K1, 2 age, because that's where people are very like, I don't know, no AI, no AI.
Yeah. I think that, I don't know if people just don't realize that you can learn so much about AI without using AI. Yeah. And I was one of those people. When it kind of first came on the scene and I was trying to figure out, I knew based on, the years of teaching that it was going to impact our world a lot. But I didn't know exactly what it looked like either. And my district was pretty early. I think it was like December 23 when I got the guidance delivered to me, as a teacher. And the K-8 area was red, banned, nothing. Like, we are not using AI in K-8. And I thought, well, how am I going to do this? The way that I teach is hands-on. There are times where I get new robots and I just put them in kids' hands and I'm like, let's just play, let's tinker, let's figure this out. I want you, without a manual, to work out this, problem before I put ideas into your head about what we could do with it. And I couldn't do that with AI. And it turns out that was a really good thing. And it has really helped me develop a strong feeling that young kids don't need AI tools to learn the basic ideas about AI. So it really comes down to conversations. So I start kinder and first. If I can just have kids realize that AI exists and that they are already using it, that it's not some big scary robot and it's just a tool that is in their home. I mean, I've heard of kids, kids are talking to their refrigerators. Like, these are things that are happening. And so if I can just kind of set their minds to dehumanizing AI, making sure that they realize that AI is a machine, that it is not their friend, that they can't have a relationship with it. We spend a lot of time talking about the difference between AI and human. And that can be a really nuanced conversation, even in kindergarten. When I first started, I read the book Doug Unplugs, which is a book about a little robot boy who has all the knowledge in the whole world because his parents plug him into the big database every night, and he has all this information. But one day he unplugs and goes outside, and he knows everything there is to know about pigeons, but he didn't know what it felt like when the pigeons flap their wings, and the sound that it makes and the feeling it has. And so we talk about, I asked them, what's the difference between AI and human? And at first they said things like, well, AI can't see and AI doesn't have hands, so it couldn't. And I'm like, okay, but that's like there are sensors and there are, it was getting kind of deep. And I said, let's focus on feelings. Is there any way that an AI can feel? Can they feel sad? Do they know what it feels like when they miss their mom, or when they're skin their knee, or and so we talk about the difference, and it really comes down to feelings in the early years, and you just have to really distill it. And then I had a first grader tell me that he heard that AI was inappropriate. And that was I think he just kind of muttered it during a conversation. He didn't even he was just like, my sister said that AI is inappropriate. And I was like, I really love it when kids bring up stuff that they are thinking or feeling, because I think a lot of times kids think I love AI. They always say, oh, Mrs. Menghini, you love AI.
Same.
No, I talk about it a lot, but and so I think it's really great when we can differentiate that. And I said, let's talk about an iPad. I held up an iPad and I said, an iPad is embedded with sensors. When you take a picture with an iPad, you're using AI. Does that feel inappropriate? No. And then I'll say, but what if you took an embarrassing picture of your friend and you shared it with other people in the class? Would that be inappropriate? Yeah. And so I'm like, it's a tool. An iPad's a tool. AI is a tool. We can use it in ways that are appropriate, and we can use it in ways that are not appropriate. And at the kindergarten first level, that's really all they need to know. And so we just talk about it a lot, and we always stick with those themes: what it is, what it isn't, and appropriate use at the most basic level.
I love that. That's exactly what I tell all teachers, but especially that lower elementary teachers. I say it's all about the conversations. It's all about the conversations, opening up, making sure that you're teaching them not to anthropomorphize AI, like you said, aka don't humanize AI. It's not your friend. That companionship piece is so important. So that's kind of what it looks like at K1 ages.
Yeah.
How does that differ with like your fifth and sixth graders?
Yeah. So in the middle, really focus on what AI, how it works. So before I get to like more advanced conversations, which I do with like fourth, fifth, sixth, second and third graders, I rely heavily on code.org because I love their AI for oceans. I love being able to train that robot. I feel like that's a really hands-on, easy way to kind of get kids familiar with the training and the machine learning. For years, I taught my kids in a computer science classroom that coding is the language you use to talk to machines. And we have machines in our daily lives, and so we need to know how to communicate with them. And that was kind of my way to show them that this is why coding matters. And then machine learning comes along, and I really think it was watching the code.org video, which is at the beginning of AI for Oceans. The first time I watched it, I was like, oh, so computers can now learn like people learn by of things and data. This changes everything. Like, what does this mean for coding? And what does this mean for computer science? And so I went through I learned as if I was a kindergartner. Let's just face it. Like, I'm learning as I'm going. So that was a really great way for me to say, hey kids, remember how I used to say this? Well, now there's this other way of learning. So then we use that. We use Google Quick Draw as another great way because it's a game and it's fun, but you also are kind of playing along with a computer that's making decisions as you draw. And then you're able to see the data, and we talk about that. And so really simple but hands-on ways to learn about machine learning, neural networks, and how AI is trained. And once they have, what is AI, what isn't AI, and then how it works, and then with the older grades, we get into really debating how we're going to use it and how we're going to allow it into our lives. So I tell the kids that are 4th, 5th, 6th graders, when you're my age, you're going to have opportunities for AI to do a lot for you. And you're going to have a lot more AI in your house and in your workplace. So what are you going to do about it? What choices are you going to make? Where are your lines going to be drawn? What is AI going to do that's going to help you? And where is AI going to take things away from you? Where is it not going to benefit your humanity? And you're going to have to make those decisions, because if you don't, you could get swept away. And so we do a lot of, we play a lot of games. I can give you examples, but like really it comes down again to conversations, examples. We study AI outputs, and we do it in a way that I hope kind of exposes where, oh yeah, this would be a really great way to use AI. This feels weird to me. This feels like it's taking something away from me as a human. And so those are the like explicit AI lessons that I teach. And then along with that, I do a bunch of projects that practice all of those human skills that we know that kids are going to need, that people are going to need, like the critical thinking and the judgment and all that. So that's kind of built into a lot of the lessons and the projects I do. But as far as like AI literacy, if you will, it all comes down to these deep conversations and these examples. And none of those things involve using AI.
Yep, agreed. I was just on a call this morning because I am going to do this Wyoming machine learning for teachers workshop in the middle of July. 4 days. We're actually going to build machine learning models and learn how to apply to class. Anyway, we had our prep call this morning, and the professor from University of Wyoming that is leading this and secured grant funding to do this, he said, if you are just teaching your students how to use ChatGPT, that is not increasing their AI literacy. AI literacy is so much more than knowing how to use AI. And so much of AI literacy isn't about AI at all. It's about communicating and learning how to collaborate and understanding things like what makes us human and why we shouldn't be quote unquote friends with AI. Like that doesn't have anything to do with using AI or learning how to, use ChatGPT or prompt. That's a tiny part of it, but AI literacy is so much bigger than just that.
It really is. And I really feel in hindsight that my district did me a huge favor in banning AI tools early on for K-8, because it gave me that incentive to be like, okay, what else can I do? And looking back, if I had had the tools available for kids, or if they had rushed into some kind of tool that was student facing, I feel like I probably would have relied more on just like, hey, let's just dive in and see what happens, because that is kind of my, first instinct as a teacher to do that kind of tinkering. But I will say on the flip side, teachers diving in and adults who already have a capacity and a foundation of knowledge absolutely should be doing that because there's no way to do a training that's an hour long and know how AI works. Like there just isn't a way other than diving in and using it. And so that was my other focus while I was figuring out how to talk to kids about it. I was learning about it, and I was really advocating for teachers to start using it. Just start. You can't have these conversations with kids if you don't have the experience using it. And there's no user manual. I know there's a lot of good certifications, but my stance is you have to just use it, and you have to use it in an authentic, and it doesn't have to be a teaching way. It can just be planning travel or figuring out what to eat for dinner or muddling through a problem that you have in any way, just to get an idea of what AI sounds like, what it's capable of, be fascinated with it, be impressed by it, be unimpressed by it, whatever the case may be. But you have to experience it in order to be ready to talk about it with kids.
Okay, I'm writing follow-up questions down as you're talking because I love so much of what you just said, and I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this because these are things that I have struggled with of how to answer and guide educators in this time. So number one, you said I've gone round and round and round about this. There are educators, people of all walks and shapes of life and jobs that, but especially educators, 'cause that's where we work with, that are really against AI from like a deep value perspective. There's so much talk about the environmental concerns. Maybe that's what's driving them. They just really don't like this idea of AI infiltrating our lives. Some of them, it's very much like a capitalistic approach of, we don't want to further support these mega billion trillion dollar
Yeah.
businesses that are creating. Some of it's all of the above, and they take the stance of like, I'm not going to use it because that's going to be my moral compass and the stake I'm going to put in the sand. You said that if you as a teacher aren't using AI, it's going to be harder for you to have these very important AI literacy conversations with students. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Paraphrasing you. So that
Yeah.
what would you tell the teacher? Because I really want to know yours because I kind of have my answer that I tell them. What do you tell that teacher that really has that stake in the ground of I don't like it for, name all of the moral reasons why I don't like AI and I don't want to use it.
Yeah.
What do you say to them?
I think it's really important to try to, well, first acknowledge, I get it. I totally get it. And like I said, I don't love it. There's a lot about it. And
Same.
as I learn more, there are days where I really don't like it at
Yep.
all. There are things
Agreed.
I could go on and on, but like I hate that my daughter just wrote a letter to a mentor to ask for an internship, and she's a beautiful writer and she doesn't believe in using AI and she didn't use AI to write it, but it's so well written that I wanted her to put a little asterisk and be like, I did not use AI to write this. And I hate I hate a lot of things about that. I hate that there's suspicion,
Mm-hmm.
and I hate that it's considered negative if you have used it, and that people are keeping imperfections in their writing so that it's, they can like prove that they didn't, like, I don't know why, but there's just a lot of suspicion. So I hate that. As a person who loves to write,
It's a lot
I've
of
had my
shaming.
own,
Let's be
yeah,
honest.
it's a lot of
It's a lot of
shaming.
shaming. I call it AI
And like,
shaming. And
yes, and I've had people, say, "Well, this sounds like you wrote it with AI." Well, I didn't, or I did, but like, does it matter? But I do it too. Like, if I see something that is very obviously AI written with no, I can tell that it was like cut and pasted because I know what it sounds like. And I'm like, God, couldn't you have taken a minute? Like, it's fine if you're using AI to help you draft something, but could you have just taken a minute to make it sound a little more personal?
yeah,
Or
add the human
I don't
touch
know.
to it. Add your
Like,
personal touch to it. Yeah.
right, exactly. Like, I don't want to be that we're this machine talking to this machine and we end up just being my AI tools talking to your AI tool. There's a lot about it that I don't know where it will go, and I don't love it. But I do think that we can't also put our head in the sand. I can't say that when I was a fourth grade teacher, loved teaching about whatever fractions. I'll just say, I don't know. I did actually love teaching fractions, but like, I had to learn things that weren't my interest when I was a classroom teacher, and I had to teach, tops to tails, everything in the classroom. There were things I didn't love. And I don't know if that's a great example because I know it's different than that. But I think that we have to acknowledge, at least, that AI is here, that it is going to impact kids and their futures. And we just can't deny it. Can we preserve the analog? Can we preserve the way that we have done things and really amplify them because we value them? Yes. And do we need foundational knowledge? Absolutely. And I think that will come to the forefront as kind of the hype dies down about what AI might do, because I think a lot of people realize. One of the things about using AI is realizing the limitations that AI has. But again, you can't make any of those decisions if you're just saying absolutely not. Like, you just can't. And, you know, banning things to me feels like, I don't know, a little lazy. It just feels like you got to muddle through some stuff, and it might not always be fun, and it may really go against, the core of what you believe as an educator, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, and you're not serving your students unless you are maintaining curiosity about things that are coming our way in the world.
Yeah, I'm with you. I have thought so much about this because this is what I do for a living is help educators navigate this time of AI and learn it themselves, learn how they can leverage it to help them be better teachers, learn how to teach it to students, teach proper use to students, all of the things. And I go back to a couple of things. One thing is I really like Digital Promise's definition of AI literacy because it uses three verbs. You have to understand, use, and evaluate. Those are the three verbs for AI literacy. And they have this really great triangle graphic that shows that all three of those verbs are intertwined. And if one piece is missing, you're not fully AI literate. So no matter how much you understand AI and how it works, and that it's just a predicting machine, it's just predicting the next token, it doesn't have feelings. No matter how much you understand its limitations and know that you have to evaluate its outputs, if you're not using it yourself, even at the most basic level, there's a piece missing there of AI literacy. The approach I take with educators that are very much, morally against it is I say, like, hey, you don't have to use it to plan your grocery list or your vacation if that's the case. But your job as an educator includes preparing these kids. That pre-conference call that I was on this morning for my Wyoming thing, the professor, computer science professor from University of Wyoming, said to 40 educators on a Zoom call that if you are not teaching these things, if you are not increasing your students' AI literacy, you are not preparing them for the future. And he literally said they will go into the job market with no jobs. Flat out. That's what he said. So now I did hear a speaker at a conference once basically call it the equivalent of medical malpractice for a teacher to not, yeah, to not
That is,
teach students AI literacy. Well, and technology in general and digital literacy in general. But right now,
yep.
the very critical thing that we're dealing with is AI literacy. I don't know. Do you go that far as to say that? But that's my argument to
Yeah.
teachers.
I do. Yeah. I do feel like it is a responsibility of teachers, and not just technology, computer science teachers, which is kind of my lane. But I think really importantly, because AI is such a general use technology, it has to be talked about in all classrooms and from a lot of different angles. What does it mean to the science community? What does it mean to literature? Or, and it's, to me, and I think this is what people need to realize, because teachers always kind of go to, and even people planning PD and stuff, they'll always say, oh, we're just so afraid teachers are going to think it's one more thing. And it's so easily integrated if you're already using it to a point where you understand it. Almost every time that I'm able to go to other teachers' classrooms, I can see a use for, not a use for it, but a conversation that could come out of it. Whether the teacher has used AI to create the graphics that they're using or any part of their lesson. And I know they have, because they've come to me and said, hey, how can I, make this better or whatever using AI. But I was in a 5th grade classroom and the teacher was teaching like idioms, like figurative language. And she was pairing up the kids and having them create artwork based on like the literal meaning and the figurative meaning of certain idioms. And then she was having them make their own. And it was really creative and really awesome. And I was like, wouldn't it be cool after they're done, put some of those into an AI, a Google Nano Banana or something, and see how AI interprets some of the idioms And again, we can model with kids. We can't let the kids do it, but we can model that for kids. We have access to that as teachers. And she said she did it, and it was so awesome because the kids were like, AI doesn't understand figurative language at all. Like AI doesn't have that capacity. When we put in something, it literally draws that whatever it is, and they came up with some absolutely ridiculous pictures out of it because it wasn't what it was meant to be. And those are things that are conversations that take 5-10 minutes of your everyday lesson that you're already doing. And those are conversations that every teacher can be having. That shouldn't be a computer science conversation or a technology conversation.
Yeah, honestly, it can't be. If you follow my work, I am a huge proponent of this idea that AI literacy is core. It's not extra, it's not optional, it's not an elective, it's core. And honestly, right now I'm focusing on AI literacy because, like I said, that's very much the
Yep.
critical thing that we need to teach everyone, but kids especially. It's digital literacy in general. And I always say technology exists because humans go to school and learn core curriculum. And then they create these amazing and also scary technologies. So, why are we not teaching in math that AI is just pattern recognition? It's just pattern
Right.
recognition. We teach patterns in preschool. We teach patterns before preschool. We're teaching patterns in board books with
Yep.
toddlers, right? That's a perfect time to just insert a little AI literacy lesson there that says, hey, guess what? That Alexa in your bedroom is just predicting the next token over and over and over again. That's it. It's not human at all. It doesn't fit, right? There you go. There's a 5-minute little AI literacy conversation in a math class when you're learning about patterns.
Yes. And a little pitch for the reason why computer science and coding is still important, if I can just throw that
Yes.
in, because that's
No,
another
please.
thing I'm very passionate
I
about.
would love to talk about it because well, did you notice that code.org just changed their name to
Yes,
Code
which
AI? Code AI?
you
Is that
know,
the name?
I know, and I have such mixed feelings about it because in one way it makes me feel so like validated because I started talking about AI at a time when my district was very much like, what are you doing? What do you do? Why are you talking about this? Why
Mm,
are you being irresponsible? Are and I was met with a lot of suspicion early
mm.
on about what my intentions
Early
were when
adopters
I started
are.
talking.
Yep.
Yes. And now I'm like, well, how do you like that? Like, and so part of me is like,
Everybody's
see,
talking about
I
AI
told
literacy.
you. Exactly. Now everybody's talking about it. So there's a part of me that's like, yeah, I really hope that people realize outside of the computer science world that whether we are using AI and I know that just within the last 6 months, so many amazing models have come out that can code and take over so much of your workload and stuff and your workflow. But you kind of need to understand and have some basic understanding of what coding is and how it works in order to really amplify using, even if the AI is doing the coding, you have to kind of understand it. And I will always die on the hill of computer science and learning how to code, pattern recognition, all the things you've talked about, that is thinking. Like that is
Computational thinking
actively,
is thinking.
yes,
Yeah.
computational thinking. And if you practice that, I mean, that's when I say I teach kindergartners how to code, they're not on computers coding. They are recognizing patterns. We're using pom-poms to make, patterns
Color-coded
and we're
squares. Yeah.
exactly. I've taught, every subject and pretty much every grade level in elementary school. And I've never felt like I could see thinking bubbles happen over kids' heads while also they're so engaged because it feels like a puzzle, it feels like a challenge, and it keeps kids so engaged in the learning process. And to me, it's just how it develops their brain. And so I absolutely love teaching computer science and specifically coding and computational thinking. I think it helps kids learn how to think.
Absolutely. Well, it's exactly the same argument. You still need basic computer science principles in the age of complex, advanced AI that can code for you, just like you still need to teach writing fundamentals
Right.
in an age of large language models that honestly, a lot of people wouldn't agree with this, but I'm sorry, it's true, can write better than the majority of humans. Not all, but I would say the
Yeah.
majority. of humans. And also, it's the same argument that when the calculator came out in math, we still need to have fundamental math skills so that we as humans can check all of the machines. We can evaluate and fact check all of the machines in our life to make sure that they're correct. And honestly, I was thinking as you were talking, I was writing down writing across the curriculum, because this idea of AI literacy across the curriculum, that it's every teacher's responsibility to have these AI literacy conversations, and digital literacy, bigger umbrella than just AI literacy, but that's the critical thing right now. I think one side note, and then I'll get back to my point about writing across the curriculum. If we would have been doing this for the last 20 years, we wouldn't be where we are with social media and all of the bans. And we're going to talk about this more, the screen time bans and the conversation happening around tech and kids. If schools 20 years ago would have started to integrate concepts like addictive algorithms and digital footprints into core curriculum, and not just have it be
Right.
an elective that only certain kids
Yeah.
get, or yeah.
We weren't ready. We weren't ready for it, but we don't have that excuse. I mean, not with AI specifically, but we don't have the same excuse now because we've lived through social media and we
Yes.
didn't do it right.
We didn't do it
You
right. I
know?
say this all the time. I'm like, and we didn't do it right for social media, and it took 10, 15 years to get to the really negative effects. We don't have
Yeah.
that time frame with AI.
Right.
It's moving, you said it at the beginning of today. It's moving incredibly fast. Well, we're already seeing the negative effects of a lack of AI literacy in terms of companionship, especially. And it's not just kids. I've seen so many
Absolutely.
news articles out there about adults that are developing unhealthy relationships with AI. And the other thing, and I think I've said this on my podcast before, so apologies if you're a listener, but a thing that keeps me up at night, people always ask me, Terminator World. I'm like, Terminator World doesn't keep me up at night. The thing that keeps me up at night is companionship, number one. And number two is what's going to happen with companionship when we get more embodied AI, because we're already having companionship issues and we're dealing with non-embodied AI like ChatGPT and
Yep.
Claude and Gemini and other chatbots.
Yeah. And it's already feeling real.
And it's already
Like,
feeling real. We're already having issues with people developing not healthy relationships with it, and it looks like a piece of software. What's going to happen when there's actually like a physical element? Now, I will say this last Christmas, I about lost my business over all of the companionship toys that were on the market. Bad news bear.
Yes, I did a whole learning series on it. I was invited to the CES conference, which is the largest tech conference in the world, which takes place in Las Vegas. I went in January, and it was the first conference I had been to that had nothing to do with technology, ed tech, sorry, nothing to do with ed tech. And I shouldn't say nothing to do, but that wasn't the focus. It was technology, all technology in every aspect of life. And there were like 150,000 people there, and all over the world, people coming from. And to be at a conference where technology was being made, and I'm not saying all ed tech is perfect when it comes to like child safety, but at least there's an acknowledgement of it. And the amount of, like you said, toys that were coming out, and even their marketing language. I took so many pictures of like posters and flyers of, that will be your child's best friend and that will understand your child. And I talked to some of them. I'm like, what ages are you marketing? Trying to be really neutral, going up to people like, oh, what ages, toddler age. I mean, their pictures are of like babies practically holding these things, and that alone, but that to me is like very outwardly egregious. But then you get to like, there's a home robot that basically can do, it's like the maid in the Jetsons where, it wheels around your house and it does the laundry and it cooks for you and it loads your dishwasher and it tells you where your lost car keys are and it does all these things. And that's all fine. Those are really cool things. But it also has a face that has heart eyes and different, and I saw a video, like a demo video, and it's like making the heart, like as the kids are leaving for school. So you have this, like, it's a robot, but it's a humanoid, and it's obviously showing emotion that humans understand. And it's also caring for your children. It's making, in the video, this kid was like, you make toast better than mom. You never burn it. Like, it's taking care of. So I brought a lot of those things back to my classroom, and that's one of the lessons I had for kids this year was, if you're an adult and you have access to a robot, a home robot that maybe costs as much as a family car, so let's just say any family could probably afford it, like finance it, an average middle income. We're not talking about the very rich that someday will be able to have these in their homes. If you're an average American family, where are you going to draw the line? We compared that with like a smart oven that might turn off before it burns the food, but you're probably not going to get attached to your oven, or your microwave that shows you the food
Doesn't
cooking,
have
or,
heart eyeballs and yeah.
Exactly. So we talk about, we really kind of talk about those nuanced differences between embodied AI, like you say, and smart machines that maybe you will allow into your home. And let's face it, will probably at some point be the only appliances we can buy as things evolve.
Yeah.
Um,
Are you following the whole
so
Posha cooking thing on TikTok? Have you seen anything about this?
no.
Okay, so
Oh,
there's this.
oh, oh, the machine that does all the cooking for
Yes,
you.
so
You
it's
put the
called
stuff
like
in it. Yes,
it's
yes,
Pasha or Posha cooking. Hold on, I'm looking
yes.
it up here.
And you put
Um,
all the ingredients in, and then you
yes.
walk away and it does the work for you. So here's what I'll say about that. Like, and I know that it is controversial on TikTok. I tell the kids, I'm like, where is the human in this? And where is the machine in this? Like, could you ever cook meat? Is a human body capable of heating up meat to 350 degrees and cooking it? No. Is your favorite recipe that your mom makes you, does that touch your heart, or does that make you feel comforted, or does that whatever? So if your mom is like putting together the ingredients and cutting all of the things and putting all the love and all the spices in it, and then she puts it into a smart oven that does what an oven is supposed to do, only better. I walk away from cookies all the time. I'm the most terrible person about setting a timer. I always burn that last batch of cookies because I walk away and go do laundry or something and forget about it. I would welcome a smart machine that reminds me to get my cookies out before they burn. And maybe if I'm already preparing the meal, let the machine do what the machine does, only smarter. So that's kind of my take on that. And it's all about, is this serving your humanity?
Yep.
Is this still maintaining the humanity? Because it's not bad to offload some things. That whole cognitive offloading. In some ways, cognitive offloading can serve the human. It's just figuring out. And again, it's that discernment. And that's,
The discernment.
that's what we strive to
Which is a
teach our
huge
kids.
back to AI literacy and how so much of AI literacy
Exactly.
isn't teaching AI. One of my biggest things I tell educators is teach your kids discernment, judgment. That's going to be one of the most important things going into this age of advanced AI, is that discernment. Yeah, so I'll put it in the show notes if you're curious. I don't know how you say it. It's Posha, Pasha or Posha. I'm guessing it's Pasha. And it's called the Pasha cooking robot. And so this lady bought one on TikTok and she shared where they have these little containers. And so she showed how she made pasta. It tells you what to put and how much to put in each container. And then you hit a button, you walk away. It does it all for you, the whole bit. And all these people were just, oh my gosh, how lazy can you be? Is that really saving you time? Da, 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 da. But then somebody stitched her video and said, hey, you know what? I am the sole caregiver of my younger brother who has profound autism. And he lives in an apartment on my property. So slightly independent, but not completely independent. And he loves food, but it's hard for him to cook because of the safety issue. Also, she's like, I'm afraid that he's like not going to cook chicken all the way through and get, E. coli or salmonella, food poisoning,
Yeah.
right? All of those concerns that you have, that she has around him cooking. She's like, this is a wonderful example of how if he had this would allow him to be more independent. And so then that sparked a conversation around, you're right, my grandma who's 89, she lives at home by herself still, would really benefit this and probably eat better if she had one of these in her house. And then now it sparked GoFundMe's because it's not inexpensive,
Yeah.
but it's not totally expensive. I want to say it was like a little over $1,000 for one of kind of like the base models. So a lot of money for a lot of people,
Yeah,
but not like an exorbitant amount of money. So then
right.
it started sparking, these GoFundMe's of, hey, why don't you start a GoFundMe and we'll help get your brother one of these robots because it would really change his life. He would learn a lot. So yeah, that, and again, it doesn't have heart eyes. It doesn't talk to you in a
Right.
cutesy voice. So this, in my humble opinion, is a good example, like you said, of how we
Yeah.
can really leverage this technology to help us as humans in a variety of ways.
Yeah. And every time a conversation like this one comes up in my classroom, it always ends being a human discussion and not a discussion about the technology. Like this one about the AI kitchen and oven, and we're talking about how mom still prepares the food, blah, blah, blah. Somebody was like, maybe my mom would be less grumpy when she comes home from work. And I think I'm a mom and I get home from work and I'm tired and it's been loud all day and I've been asked 35,000 questions. And do you know when my kids see my face, the first question that everybody asks, what's
What?
for dinner? What time's dinner? And I'm like, I just need 5 minutes. And I'm grumpy with them. Like,
Yep.
this could improve family life. And that's I shouldn't just put it on mom, but in my household, it's mom who cooks. And so let's talk about how this will actually have peace and harmony reign in your household at the end of a long work day
But
for mom
that's
and
a
dad,
perfect example of why this AI shaming just isn't, in my opinion, helping at all. Like, I think the
No.
people that are AI shaming are coming from a good place of, hey, let's not lose our humanity and our critical thinking skills, and let's not put AI slop out on the internet all of the time, that kind of thing. And let's keep being individual and not just have this cookie cutter society where everything looks the same because it's all coming from the same AI models essentially. That's the place that it's coming from. But what it undercuts is exactly what you just said of, hey, this is a piece of technology and a use of AI that could really help me be a better parent and help us
Yep.
have a healthier
Yeah.
family aspect. So why are we shaming when there can be really great uses of it? Like it just all comes down to that centrist approach again, right?
Yep.
Let's meet in the center. We don't want AI to take over the world. We don't want it to take over our thinking. We don't want it to take over all of the art in the world. Let's come to the center. And ironically, I've been saying this for 5 years of people concerned about the effects of AI on like artistry and stuff. I have been saying that I think that human created things are going to become more valuable and increase in value. And that's exactly what's happening is
Yes.
seeing that
Absolutely. I agree.
people are willing to pay more for something that is made by human hands. In a world
Yeah.
where AI can make things that used to take hours of human time and could do in seconds,
Yep.
we value the human creation part of it even more. Now, that two things can exist at once, that doesn't mean that an artist can't leverage AI to help them mock up a design or create a 3D
Yep.
rendering of their sculpture to help them make the, whatever it is. Like that,
Yep.
those two things can exist at once. It's still very handmade and it's still the human at the center, but the technology is supporting it. We've done a lot of talking about how you're having conversations around AI literacy. A lot of that, especially at the early ages, is very much no tech or very low tech access. You also teach computer science, multimedia, CTE. What does that part of your classroom look like?
When I hear the arguments for screen time and the banning of things, again, I have to say, I totally understand it. Are there teachers out there that are putting kids on computers and doing things that aren't intentionally helpful? Yes, I'm sure that that's happening. Like the screens are available, but I also think that with balance and with intention, things related to computer science, I mean, it's kind of the nature of the beast. In order to give my kids a full picture of what coding looks like, we have to get on screens sometimes. And so I've made it, in fact, that was my motivation for going to ISTE the first time I went was, gosh, I feel like the kids are on screens a lot because the things that I'm using, and again, not bad things, but like the coding platforms that I have to teach kids coding are all screen related. I want to get them off screen. And that led me to microbits and to spheral bolt robots, which does need a screen to code it. I mean, I just think that it's a reflection of life. It's not realistic to get off a screen in every way. Like, it's just not. And it doesn't matter if you're going to be a doctor or an architect or even somebody in the creative arts. You know, this is where we're at, and this is the technology that's available. And if you're not understanding it, you're not using it, you're not leveraging it, then there's a chance you're not going to be you're going to be left behind in a way. So I try to be intentional about it. I try to balance the time that we spend on versus off. But if I was going to try to teach computer science completely without screens, could I teach computational thinking? Yes. There's a lot of unplugged activities that we could do, but I still feel at the end of the day like my kids would leave and not really have a full picture of what they're walking into. It feels like that
Cut
would
short.
be really hard to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
cut
And I
short.
mean, I'm talking from, a very specific, obviously my classroom is the computer lab from the past. Like, that's not what it is at all, but like, that's where learning lives. But I see it in teachers having screens in their classrooms. Classroom teachers has taken some of the things that I used to have to teach kids, like how to get into Google Docs, how to write a document, how to create. My kids are great with Canva. They create so many amazing things using Canva. They're thinking, they're building skills that are real skills for the future. We talk a lot about that. Every time when I introduce Canva to the kids, I say, think about your future self. Think about how, if you're going to start a business, if you're going to, the skills translate to so much in the real world that we need to use these tools. Drawing on a poster board, it might be fine for summarizing a book report or something, but you're probably not going to create a poster board for your boss when you want to propose the next business idea. Let's just be real, So I think that it's going to be really hard to do a lot of what we need to do to prepare kids beyond AI completely without using screens. But intentional use is obviously, yes, very important.
You teach technology and multimedia. I think that some people out there that would hear that, it's just like me when I say that I help educators use technology as a learning tool. They have in this mind that this idea of like endless staring at screens. In reality, if we were to go to your classroom for a week and sit in your classroom all day long, how much are kids looking at a screen versus not interacting with technology?
It depends week to week. I see my entire student population of almost 700 kids. I see them for 40 minutes once a week. So 1 week's learning might be building in Minecraft. They may be doing a digital citizenship lesson in a Minecraft world where they're spending the entire 40 minutes building that. I usually have them paired, so they have to be communicating with others and they're not just completely absorbed in a screen. And then there may be 2 or 3 weeks that go by where we're all of a sudden constructing, the school of the future, where we're using the makerspace area and we're completely off screen, or we're building obstacle courses for indie robots, which are robots that don't need screens at all, but go with, colored censored pads. So it really depends. Although I try to plan intentionally for the time I spend on and off screen, I also don't let it limit me. We do a Sphero robot parade where they create a float and they put it on top of their Sphero bolt and they have to code the parade route. They may have to be on that tablet the entire time with their team, one of them at least, trying to iterate how we're going to get it around. And now that we have the drag of the robot, we have to change the code. And they're looking at a screen to code it, but they're also looking at the robot and they're adjusting and they're taking weight off of their float. It's all combined.
It's a lot of back and forth. I love coding as an example to show that we have to have, like you said, you have to have the device. It's the interface to build the
Right.
code and load it onto whatever the indie robot or the Sphero Bolt, whatever it is, right? But there's so much going back and forth. We write some code, we load it onto the Sphero Bolt, We press a button, we watch what happens. Did it do the parade route right? Oh, nope, it took a left when it was going to take a right. Okay, we go back to the screen, we make an edit to the code, we reload it, we play it again, we test it again. So it's not like this zombie experience of kids just staring at a screen. It's like you said, it's so iterative. It's hard to imagine if you've never seen it. And I think that's a huge problem with the conversation going on right now about screen time is that most people have never seen kids doing a creative project where the device is just another tool that's kind of
It's
there.
just a yes, it's a
Yeah.
tool, and it becomes secondary when you don't make a big deal about it. Like it's something I need to code my robot. And the skills that they're learning, like you said, they're not zombies looking at a screen. They're talking to each other. They're arguing with each other. Set it for this. Why did you set it for that? You set it too long, or reconstructing and going back to their prototype. And like there's so much going on as far as communication and judgment. And you talk about teaching critical thinking and like all of the things that go into getting a successful, whatever it is that they're trying to do. There's so much buy-in, there's so much engagement, and so much agency. They are in charge. They know
Mhm.
what they're trying to do. We had a committee come through because we were going for this certification for our school. And it was really funny because teachers at my school tend to teach this way. We have a design thinking model throughout all of our classrooms. And one of the judges who came through said, it's really hard to catch your teachers teaching. Like teaching, like standing in front
Direct
of a classroom
instruction.
and
Yep.
teaching. And it's like, well, if you think that's the only way teachers teach, then you definitely do not spend, time in classrooms where you're letting kids, that is a huge compliment for me to hear that. I hope that anybody who ever comes in my classroom is not coming in and watching me stand in front of my kids and talk, because we are learning together all the time. And the more engaged they are in their own path with intention that I've set for them, the more thinking they're doing on their own. That's what I strive to do.
I've been thinking about this a lot lately. About all the screen time and all this legislation and all of the backlash against educational technology and tech in schools and tech in classrooms. I saw a post the other day that was, a reason why we need to ban devices or like severely limit screen time. The reasoning was, well, I went to a school and I looked into the classroom and it was dead silent and all of the kids are sitting at their desk staring at a screen. And there was no conversation happening in the class. And I said, I had this flashback to 20 years ago when I started teaching to when I remember when I would get evaluated for my principles and things. And then also fast forwarding several years when I really started being a tech integration specialist and more working with teachers on technology, the backlash was, well, when you're doing projects that put students in the driver's seat and allowing them the creative freedom to build and create, it's loud, it's messy, it's noisy, it's busy. You walk by a classroom and it looks like complete chaos, and that the teacher
Yep.
doesn't have any classroom management control over that class. And again, there's a device there, but it's just the intermediate. It's there as a tool if they need it type of
Yep.
thing. And there was pushback when we first started integrating tech and like especially with
Oh
like iPad
yeah.
charts and things that like, but this is loud and noisy and chaotic, and I don't know if I can do this as a teacher. It looks like I don't have control, quote unquote, over my classroom. Okay. So
Yeah.
fast forward 15, 20 years, and now we've got people saying, oh, but they're quiet and it's a controlled
That's a
environment.
bad thing.
And
Yeah.
it's a bad thing because they're looking at a screen. Now, I have
Yep.
no idea in that case what they were doing on the screen. But my guess is if you have a classroom that's dead silent, those kids are, there's two scenarios. One, they're super, super engaged and they're in a flow state, whatever it is
Yep.
that they're doing. Or two, that teacher has a classroom management style that's like the fear based classroom
Yep.
management style. That if you speak up, if you say anything in my classroom, because I am very much a lecture, direct instruction type teacher, that's a that's not good. Does that make sense at all? It's like this
It
very
does.
oxymoron
It does.
that I'm seeing happening, and I can't wrap my brain around how we went in a span of 10 to 20 years from kids in rows being quiet is a good classroom and that teacher has great classroom management to, but
Yeah.
if they're in rows being quiet and looking at a screen, that's an absolutely terrible thing. No matter
It's such a great,
what they're doing
yeah.
with that screen, no matter what, that's a terrible thing. And they're not interacting, they're not learning to talk with each other, they're not learning to collaborate, they're not learning to communicate because they're just staring at the screen. Riddle me that.
It's a great parallel. I know. And you're right. And I had to unlearn that as a teacher from the 90s, because when my principal would walk in, the first thing I do is look around and be
Yeah.
like, is everybody watching? Is everybody looking? I had those rows and desks or
Yep.
desks and rows. I mean, thank goodness we've come a long way since then. But I love that parallel. Like, why have we evolved to that? And thank goodness we have, but let's make sure that the intention is understood, like,
And it's
yeah,
all about what they're doing on that screen. Those kids
right.
sitting in rows, being quiet with their headphones on, could have been doing something super amazing, interactive. They could have been getting personalized feedback. They could have been,
Right.
practicing something personalized that they need to work on. Or they could have been doing something super passive and just kind of watching videos and answering multiple choice questions. And then the other parallel that I can't wrap my brain around is how is that different than them like doing a worksheet
Exactly. Well, and how is
quietly?
right. And how is a picture of one classroom the determination? We
Yep.
know that there is a variety of different, from school to school, from classroom to classroom, things can look different. So I think that taking one small picture and making a big sweeping decision it's not really the smartest way to run a
Yep.
school or a district.
On that note, I want to ask you, so we're dealing with a lot of statewide legislation that is proposing screen time limits, mostly by grade bands, saying like, okay, like kindergarten through second grade, you can only have X amount of minutes of quote unquote screen time per week. We're also seeing it a bit at the local district level. LAUSD implemented a policy with some screen time limits. If the state of Arizona or your district were to do that, enact some sort of screen time limit, how would your classroom be affected? How would your students be affected by that?
Gosh, it's hard to imagine. It would feel like we were going back in time. I will say that I'm adaptable. Like, we've always had to be adaptable, right? And I love my job, so I do try to adhere to what, my district tells me. But I do think that that would be a huge step backwards. I mean, that's all I can really say about it, is that I would question the I don't know, the knowledge that my district had on what we need to get kids prepared for the world. That would be, I would seriously question, I guess I would seriously question, what we're doing in education if that happened.
What would be lost or what would you have to cut if you had some screen time limits where you had to count the number of minutes students are looking at a quote unquote screen?
I feel like the real practical learning would be really affected by that. There would be tools in my classroom that I couldn't use. I mean, I wouldn't be able to use certain robots that need, or I guess if I had a limit, I could, use them up to a certain point and then, we maybe don't finish for that day, or, we front load with a lot of kind of off-screen stuff, and then we get on and we hurry up and put everything in. I mean, I guess there are ways around it. Like I said, we adapt to what we're given or what is available to us. But I think that, I don't know, I think it's hard for me because of what I do to be able to answer that fully, from a classroom teacher's perspective. Maybe they'd have more material to cover that they wouldn't need a screen to do. But yeah, it would take a lot of extra work on my part to make sure that we intentionally segmented the time instead of making it into a flow where it felt a lot more like real world, where sure, we have our screen here and it's on because we're in the middle of doing this, but then it becomes like, how do I know? How long did you focus on the screen? Do you have 5 more minutes? You put it down. So I'm going to stop the timer. And like, how do you manage that with a room of 25 kids? Like, I don't know. Then I get irritated because I'm like, who do you think we are
Yeah.
to police this? Like, how do we do this?
So yeah, so what you're saying is it would likely increase the amount of your prep time and your workload, as well as create a bit of a classroom management struggle.
Yeah, for sure. If I had to police that or, really keep a time on that, I don't even know how that's would they have devices turn off automatically after 20 minutes? Like, is that how it would work so that we just get to like, up, time's up. Okay. Like, logistically, like it would be a very difficult thing to figure out.
If something like that were to happen, would it affect all of your students equally, or would there be certain populations of students who would benefit or be harmed by some type of screen device limit in schools?
It would increase the divide for sure, because you've got the kids already, and it's going to happen regardless, but you have the kids who have access to things at home, kids whose parents contact me and say, hey, my kids are loving this coding program. Is there a version I can do at home? And they have the means to buy the extra stuff, So we always have those divides. But yeah, if I can't provide that direction for them at school, then some of them will go home and be able to get the guidance and some won't. There's also a matter of just accessibility, in the classroom, where kids have devices that help translate or help read aloud things to them so that they can get to a point in their regular classwork. And with those things taken away, like I see a lot of conversations coming out of that. Well, that's okay to use it that way, but not this way. And again, the logistics of it, at some point you have to trust that educators are doing what's best for kids and that we're going to use it intentionally and where they need it. And, it's not that we're just plugging kids into machines, a vegetative state in our classrooms. I hear those things. I see those screen-free advocates. It seems like a lot of hype and a lot of fear when the reality is typically very different than that.
It's such a good point. I've been thinking about this a lot, that this idea of not all screen time is created equal, and that applies to school and formal education learning environments, but it also applies to home life. And a kid's parent, their knowledge or lack of knowledge about technology, and also their means to purchase or not purchase good apps, websites, all of the things, is going to really affect the type of screen time and scrolling that student does at home. So yeah,
exactly.
Something huge to think about. If there are people listening to this that make decisions that affect your classroom, your students, your school, your district, what do you wish they knew?
I don't know if it's so much what I wish they knew as what I wish they would consider when making decisions, and that's talking to teachers. I feel like that's one of the reasons why I started speaking out, because I felt like decisions were being made at upper levels that affected me in my classroom that didn't serve my students, because they weren't in my classroom seeing what I was doing and seeing how my students were learning. And if they would trust teachers, if they would listen to teachers, if they would say, hey, I'm thinking about investing this money in XYZ, does that work for you? How would that look in your classroom? And just kind of consider teachers in the process of making decisions. I feel like I've had to be really loud to be heard, because I got very frustrated that I was not being heard or that I was being misunderstood, especially with all of the AI stuff that came up. And it shouldn't take that. I've spent a lot of time being very loud about this, and I now am being listened to and am trusted and am, a resource for my district. But not all teachers are going to do that, because they just flat out don't have the time. They're invested in the day-to-day with their kids. But we shouldn't have to be loud to be heard. to be considered and to be resourced. And I think that there are a lot of teachers. I think there's a lot of assumption that people are like, teachers don't have time for that. They don't want to they don't bother them. Let them teach the kids. But you will find teachers at each school, maybe not all teachers, but you will find teachers at each school who are willing to share their voice with you. And I just wish it was done more.
I mentioned at the beginning that you have a book that's coming out this summer. Super exciting.
Yeah.
It's called White Space. Tell us more about it. What is it? Who's it for? How can you get it?
It's called White Space, Raising Thinkers in the Age of AI. And I co-wrote it with Saba Kidwai, who's the CEO of Designing Schools. And Saba and I met at a conference years ago. Her whole kind of platform is about design thinking. She goes into schools and trains teachers. She speaks worldwide. So her view is kind of on a big scale. And then my view obviously is on a very zoomed in scale. And we have had conversations for years, just hour-long conversations on the phone about all of this, and our thinking is a lot the same, but our view is very different. And so the book came out of the conversations that we had, and kind of this feeling that it's not how how AI is changing what we do, but it's what we're paying attention to. So that idea of white space is like this space for opportunity, this space for noticing problems, asking questions, exercising judgment. There is an opportunity there that I think that when we focus on fear and hype, we don't see. And so this book kind of stems from those conversations. So we broke it into 3 parts. There's the first part focuses on, we call it the 3 I's, identity. So helping kids realize, I should say, pause and say, we wrote it for an audience of parents and teachers as a really digestible resource, as more of kind of a conversation case study resource, and not like we didn't want it to feel heavy or like research intensive, but more of like, here are activities and conversations, that you can have. So the first section is about building kids' identities. The more they know about themselves, the more they're going to be able to interact with these tools.
Love it.
Then integrity, building integrity. What does that mean? What do we value? And then the last part goes into impact. So once we understand ourselves and we understand, purposeful use, what impact are we going to make? And so we blend our stories of our 2 different viewpoints and, some big ideas that kind of came out of our conversations and the time that we spent writing the book. And I'm really excited for it. And it is done. But it is not, it's done, but it's not ready yet. It's in the publisher's hands. So we're hoping to have it released in late summer, and it will be available for pre-sale very soon. I hope it gets into the hands of people who can really benefit from it.
How can listeners connect with you?
I am on LinkedIn. You can look me up there. I also do a kind of more, not day-to-day, but a more kind of constant snapshot of my classroom, my activities, the things that I do on kind of a more personal community level on my Instagram, which is Tech Teacher Tara.
I would highly recommend following Tara on Instagram. She shares all sorts of great things that she's doing in her classroom, projects that she's doing with students. So if you're listening to this and you don't work in a school, you're not in a classroom, your classrooms, I should say, follow her, and that will give you that window, like we said, that window into her classroom.
Yes.
Wrapping up, we end every episode with a Make EdTech 100 moment. So this is like what you want to leave listeners with.
I will leave you with, if you are a teacher, just stay curious, keep learning, and don't be afraid to be vulnerable in front of your students. You're not going to know everything. You don't need to be the expert on everything. And when you put yourself in a situation where you learn alongside your students, you can be really surprised by what that brings out in your classroom, the authentic conversations that you can have if you're learning alongside your students. And I think there's no better time to do this than with AI. Don't wait to feel like you're an expert. None of us are. Just have conversations, have honest conversations, human conversations, and listen. Listen to your students.
Thanks for joining Make EdTech 100. I know educator time is valuable, and I'm honored you choose to spend yours with me. For more EdTech strategies you can use tomorrow and ways to bring me to your school or event, head to lindyhawk.com. If this episode resonated, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. I'm Lindy Hawk. Go forth and make EdTech 100.